All right, so we're going to do a full warm-up series for a collegiate age sprint squad. We're going to start from ground-based, work our way up to a walking series, working to marching and skipping, and then we should be ready to rock and roll with whatever practice or competition has. So first thing we're going to do is from a all-four position. Big thing we want to make sure is that we're still having our toes pulled towards our shins so we get that dorsiflexion. Hands are going to be under shoulders. We want to make sure that we have our hips in a good position. We don't let that back arch as we go through this. So we want to stay right here. It's also going to help build a little bit of our trunk strength with a little bit of isometric hold as we go through. So going to go through the sets and reps are all lined out in the text of it. Basically, I'm just going to demo a few reps and some coaching cues, and then for the full program you can look to see what it is. But each of these realistically do probably about 10 per exercise per leg. So the first one is just a fire hydrant. So we're just going to take leg out as far as we can go while keeping hips and shoulders parallel to the floor without getting ourselves out of position. Next one we're going to go to is a hip circle where the leg's going to go straight back and we're going to bring it around. Once again, focusing on good posture from head to hips and making sure that our hips stay in contact with the ground. We don't end up tilting to one side or the other. So we go then to a donkey kick. We'll turn sideways for this one. We're going to keep the leg in the same position, take that heel and just push it up to the ceiling. If in here you get to a point where you see or you feel yourself or see your athletes start to drive up and arch, that's too far. Keep a good position and just push it up there to get yourself a nice good stretch as we go through there. Next one we would go to would be once again leg out behind, and we're going to just slightly turn that toe and bring it out to our side as far as we can. Rotate it back. With this one, be really paying attention to the hip so we don't rock all the way over, but also the shoulder so that way you don't see your athlete's accordion and kind of shrink there to get their mobility. That leg should go out as far as it can, and we should come right back. Once again, we're doing about 10 of these on each side. So now we've hit that. We're going to go to a little bit of shoulders while we're here before we move else. So we're just going to get into a pike position. Heels are going to be off the ground just a little bit, and we're going to push back so our heels are flat, touch opposite hand to opposite toe. Just going to get a nice little rhythm here, nice and smooth. Get a good stretch with those shoulders, but also with those calves and hamstrings to get through here as we go. We'll hit 10 of those each side. And from there, we'll stay in our kneeling position. We'll do what I just refer to as a shoulder slide. Just going to turn palm up on my right hand. I'm going to reach underneath as far as I can go. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to slide that other direction. And we'll just go back and forth nice and smooth, getting ourselves in a good position, making sure I watch my hand as it goes, so that way as I rotate my T-spine, everything else flows with it. I'm not trying to fight myself. After that, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to turn and rotate to open up the chest and shoulders. We're going to cross over, take right hand up to the ceiling. Once again, watch that hand, and nice and smooth come down, and cross over to the other side. And get that arm up there. We're not going quick and snappy, and we don't need to hold it. We just go to a nice smooth position where I can reach, and then I return back to my beginning position in my all four kneeling position. After that, we're going to go to laying in a prone position, and we're going to do basically probably a lot of names for it. I just refer to it as a seal clap. So we're going to keep hands up, down the legs, up above, to help keep getting those shoulders warmed up a little bit. Make sure that the arms stay off the ground. Works best if you just keep your head neutral. Don't have to look to see what your hands are doing. From there, we would just gonna turn over, and we're going to do a single leg lift. Whichever leg is not being lifted, that foot's gonna be flat on the floor. And we're gonna pull that toe up to the shin again, and we're just gonna lift to the point where those hips are being still in contact with the ground, nice and smooth, making sure we get both sides with that. After we do that, we're going to do a side lying add an abductor stretch. So we're going to make sure that we are in a straight line as best as possible, using that arm for a pillow, straight line all the way down. And I'm going to take that top leg while I am pulling my toes, almost thinking about flexing my quad and lifting up. This is only going to be about 45. I don't need to go as far as possible. We're going to get ourselves a good 8 to 10 reps here. And then once I've hit that top leg, I'm going to bring it up, I'm going to plant it, and now I'm going to do my bottom leg. If I need to hold this foot, that's perfectly fine, but we still want to really focus on making sure we're staying as straight as possible. And we're going to lift that up and get that for our reps in there. Once again, after you did that, you would flip over and you would hit the other side. So now we're going to work on making our way back up. And I want to make sure I go in the order that I wrote it. So we would go to our half kneeling arm swings before we get all the way up. So we're going to get into a half kneeling tall position. Making sure that we're deliberate in our setup. Knee over ankle, hip, knee, shoulder, ear, toe, once again dorsiflexed. We're just going to work on just relaxing those arms, nice and smooth, getting that swing in there. Just to get ourselves a little bit fluid with the motions that we're going to get with our marching and our skipping. So from there, now we're going to stand up to our feet and we are going to start doing a little bit of a walking series. So the first thing that we do is just a normal schoolyard skip. We're going to keep getting the heart rate elevated a little bit. About 20 yards of skipping, nothing fancy, just literally tell them to loosen up and skip. Right, if they can't figure out how to skip, this is a really good way to figure out coordination if you're working with younger kids. But for this, it's just really to kind of just normal skip, figure out how to get that moving a little bit and just relax. We would then do a lateral shuffle with arm circles. So I would just shuffle as I go here. I would hit my 20 yards. I'd come back, and then we'd change the arm motion to a hug. I'd shuffle, hit the one side, and come back to make sure I was going both ways. Right, the purpose of that is to help get the heart rate elevated a little bit. Also just to help to relax as we're going through this so we don't stay stiff as we move through our warm-up. After that, we're going to go into an inchworm. We're going to do 10 yards of all of these so that way we can just continually go back and forth if you're out there on a track, or if you're on the track, you can just do 10 yards and just keep progressively going down the track. So for the inchworm, once again, we're just going to come down, get the floor, walk ourselves out. We're going to come down and do a push-up, and then we're just going to nice and smooth bring those toes up as close as we can and continue ourselves inching our way down there. So that'd be the first piece. The next 10 yards, we then go to a walking knee hug. Stay nice and tall, good posture. We're going to bring that knee up. We're going to pull that knee in to our hip, stay nice and tall on that down leg. No, we're not going to be coming up or anything. We're just going to stay down. Step, pull that in. As we're doing this, this should help build a lot of repetition of where we want that leg and that foot for our acceleration and our sprinting to make sure we got knee up, toe up. After those 10 yards, we then go to a leg cradle. We're just going to turn that leg at about 45 degrees. I'm going to grab and I'm just going to pull right in, straight into my hip. I'm not really concerned with trying to pull it higher. Just want to be here, pulling that right in as I go. Once again, making sure I keep a good posture and position. Not worry about changing the angle of my leg any further than what I naturally turn it. After that, we'd go to a quad stretch. We could go same side with a reach. Helps keep our posture and our chest up so we don't hunch over to take away from that stretch of the hip flexor and the quad. Knees should be pointed at the ground. If your athlete would so like to do so, they could cross grab and still reach up with that opposite hand to keep themselves upright. Once again, we are moving on down the track with this. After our Quad stretch, we're going to do a scoop stretch. So a small step out in front, legs going to be relatively straight, toe pulled up. Back foot's going to be toe pointed forward. I'm going to bend down like I'm picking up a big ball and stand up with it, right? This is going to be working on that hinge. Come down, pick up, stand all the way up. Nice little step. Go through to get that rear end and that hamstring a little bit warmed up. And we hit that for our 10 yards. So we hit that, and our last walk that we're going to do is just be a lateral lunge. So we can just get there, we can lunge, work on keeping our toes forward as best as we can, making sure we can try to keep our chest up and avoid from leaning or pressing on our legs so that our legs have to do the work. Once we did it one direction, we just turn around. Boom, we could just kind of walk ourselves on down for those 10 yards to make sure we hit our distance. Once we have done this, now we're going to start going into our march, excuse me, and our skips. So the first one is just going to be an A march, nice and smooth. We're going to now incorporate our arm action into this, and we're just going to work on that knee punch forward, that toe up, striking on the ball of the feet. Nice and smooth, small little steps to make sure I am still striking where I need to. Do it from the side. Nice and easy, good knees. Working on those mechanics, especially for our acceleration. So we do an A march, and then we follow adding in a little bit of rhythm and patterning with an A skip, right? So same motion with arms and legs. Now we're just adding ourselves a little bit of rhythm in there. It's a little bit of a double skip. Still got that knee punch with that ankle underneath. Still coming down, striking underneath my hips, so that way I can build that pattern, that position of where I want to strike during my acceleration and my running. The next skip that would be helpful, just helps to build a little pattern, is just a pop skip. It's a little bit of a variation of it. Basically both feet hit the ground, but one foot always comes up every time. The leg action and arms are still the same. Making sure that we're just building that in and getting some coordination and timing down. Still striking underneath my hips. If I want to try to project this more horizontally, I have to make sure that I coach my athletes to drive into the ground harder as opposed to reaching out in front of them, because then that throws off their striking mechanics and reaches out in front and starts to screw them up for what we're going to do instead of getting them primed for what we need them to do for their warm-up. After this, we then transition to an A run. So instead of just doing the march, we would just pick up the pace and get ourselves to do ourselves with the run, right? Gets ourselves primed up for first few steps in our acceleration as we go through. And just gets us a little bit more intensity as we roll through our warm-up to getting ourselves ready to rock and roll. One of the last ones we'll hit would be a bound. So we're going to alternating bound, moving forward, and it would just be nice and smooth. And we can create, once again, we can either do a bound for height vertically, we can do a bound horizontally, which is more likely what we're going to do, so we can use this to build up into your acceleration. So we do those, and then we would transition into a 3 bound to acceleration, to where we could go 1, 2, 3, boom. And then start taking off into your acceleration, almost like a little bit of a build-up, but with the benefit of the bound of mirroring the same acceleration mechanics as you would need to start your sprint. You've already got that built up, and then you jump right into it. So that'd be a warm-up to get yourself ready for a track workout. Give it a shot, and let me know what you think.